Hello, welcome to another episode of Tales from the Bridge. My name is Tristan.
My name's Sam.
And I'm Kevin. So as you guys are listening to the episode, if there's anything that's interesting to you or anything that you want to comment on, don't hesitate. Leave a comment on Apple Podcasts or send us an email or contact us through our website. We love to hear from you. It's when you reach out that we know what we're doing is resonating with you. So give us your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you.
And we've got a lot to talk about this episode. We've got some science fiction, science fact. Is that right, Kevin?
That's right. We do.
And then we've got the book of the month, but we're also going to talk about what we're reading, and we're going to recommend some TV shows and movies, possibly. You guys got anything to talk about this week?
Yeah, yes, I do. All right. Let's make our way over to the bridge. All right. Hey, Kevin, I hear you got some science fiction, science fact for us.
Oh, do I ever? Well, here's a question. Is there actually much news these days that isn't science fiction, science fact? Because it seems like everything is like sci-fi these days. Every time you turn on the news, everything is sci-fi related. But yes, I do have something interesting. And it comes from a YouTuber. And some of you may be familiar with a gentleman named Mark Rober. He is a former NASA engineer turned into a YouTuber, and he's very successful. He's known for videos related to things like making glitter bombs. When people steal packages from your porches, they take it and they steal it, and then it blasts glitter all over the place. And he's also made squirrel contraptions in his backyard that squirrels have to go through to get to walnuts. And anyway, he does things that are quite popular online. But the thing I wanted to talk about was a drone delivery system that he was talking about recently. And drone deliveries is something we've all heard about for a long time. Back in 2013, Amazon said, we're working on drone delivery. We're going to have that to running as a beta test by the end of the year. And here we are 10 years later, and I don't think we have widespread drone delivery from Amazon really anywhere in the world. There might be some pilots, but it just hasn't happened. And I think there's some logistical challenges with it that I'm sure you guys can probably imagine. Like, a drone delivery would only really work if you've got a good sized yard. How does it work with apartments? Nobody wants these things with big spinning propellers whizzing around people's houses in case there's a problem where you start chopping off the heads of, I don't know, birds and things. Anyway, Mark Rober talked about, I thought, something that was so sci-fi, science fiction, science fact, that I wanted to talk about it with you guys. It's a drone delivery system, but it goes up like a big drone, like the kind that you would imagine, but then it actually has like a winch, and it lowers another unit underneath it. And this company is called Zipline. So if anybody were to Google it, it's a real company. They do real drone deliveries right now, using a different product, I think, but this is a new one. So this winch drops imagine a shopping basket that would be full of whatever you've got, an Uber Eats, a sandwich, whatever it is, something that you've ordered and needs to come to your house quickly. But this little basket has the ability to steer itself. So it has a little fan, a directional fan that can make it on the winch so that it can move back and forth 4, 5, 6 feet, maybe more than that. So it can perfectly position itself wherever it needs to be, and the big honking drone that is noisy and scary and loud just stays up a few hundred feet, or however high it is, 150 feet, let's say. And what they're saying is that this is the sort of thing that could allow drone delivery to actually work, because the big honking drones don't have to land. So the science fiction side is, of course, you can pick up your phone, you can order something from Uber Eats, which is already pretty science fiction-y, honestly, in my books, being kind of an old dumb guy. But then you add on this drone delivery, and it doesn't make any noise. It's completely silent. It's not going to kill my cat, right? I think it's kind of cool. Do you think that this is fiction, or do you think that we could actually see this? Like, do you guys see this as a reality thing, or just more talk?
I think of all the regulations that you have to sort of overcome in terms of airspace in an urban area. So I worked in TV for a while, and we looked into drones, and drone use was increasing when I left, and we looked at it like as a tool maybe to cover a protest or something like that. And what we found was that the we could hover a drone over, say, a lake like Ontario, and get a wide shot, under certain circumstances. And even then, because depending if there's an airport nearby and that sort of thing, you come under a lot of restrictions. So you can't fly. When I heard, you couldn't fly over an urban area. People, I understand there's been some changes to that, but it comes. I think it's physically possible. I think it's technologically possible. In fact, if given free reign, it could probably get even more creative. Like, I do think that's entirely viable, in the same way that like an autonomous car is viable, right? Like, I think that's possible, but not without its hurdles are kind of, I think, logistic and regulatory and the health and safety concern too, right? Like, what does a drone accident look like? What's the risk there, and is it any greater than the risk to a delivery van? And so I think there's a lot of different things that kind of have to come together, but I don't think it's the technology is the problem. It's the regulations and the politics, and it's the human side, I think,
Changing the
represents.
hearts and minds of those around us. Because you're right, a delivery van can kill a cat just like a drone could.
Yeah.
Maybe
But
more
also,
likely to.
I think we also assume that these would be going door to door, and I think that's where we're going wrong. I can see this more like, you remember when mail used to go door to door, and now it's actually more common that there's just a communal row of boxes, and now you're going in there. I can see it being like that, where it's just there will be ports. I mean, if this is going to happen, it's going to have to be going to one area only. Because if I'm ordering one thing and I never order anything, I don't know, now it's figuring out a whole new way, and it's going somewhere with new people, new animals, like you say, the cats, and I can just see it like going to the same spot. To maybe you have to walk 2 blocks to get there. Maybe you have to walk a block. I don't know how common, but I can see there being like a little area where they would go for just like the mail. But
Mhm.
but also, I mean, one reason that they talked about this 10 years ago was for the emissions, right? Let's lower emissions. Drones are electric. We can do this. And I think we're closer to the autonomous car being electric,
True.
and those being more common. So that infrastructure is already there. But yeah, that's an interesting thing, because yeah, I think we did. I remember hearing about that 10 years ago and being like, "Whoa, imagine your package coming right to your door." And it's like, well, they already do.
Hmm.
Um, and it's by gas most of the time, so that'll change. But yeah, I can see it being more like walking to the mailbox rather than a drone flying by my window.
Right. So it's still in the realm of science fiction. But here's a let me paint a picture. Imagine you've got a drone, maybe it's this one from Zipline that lowers itself down and it's very quiet and it solves a few of these operational challenges. Um, but what if you coupled that with a delivery truck? So the roof of this delivery truck is a landing zone for one or two of these drones, and it drives to a location. It's doing its own deliveries, and while it's doing deliveries, the driver is able to load these two drones with lighter packages, let's say, that are within a few blocks of the delivery truck. And then they could be like 3 times as productive because there for all the light deliveries for the houses that it could actually do the deliveries for. They're able to make that happen, and the driver can go and do the deliveries to places that the drones can't get to. But by coupling it with maybe an electric delivery vehicle or something, you could really ramp up productivity. And granted, you're right. We already have the solution. The solution's already there. We have delivery people, but I guess this is just an incremental improvement.
Can we just get ice cream trucks for adults that are just like driving around with the, like, if I heard some music playing, I was like,
Jingle
oh, I'm
jangle.
going for a Big Mac. Like, I just run out my door and flag them down. I'm fine with that.
I still do that. If I hear an ice cream truck go by,
Yeah.
I'm like, ice cream.
For our listeners who don't know, I'm Kevin's neighbor, and I can attest to having seen him run out digging for change. for ice cream in front of
Wait, wait.
us. Back to the zipline thing, though.
Yep.
Quickly, I just can't help but thinking, but what the competition would look like. What if it was sort of successful? You had a company that's let's say zipline gets out there and they're kind of popular. There's going to be competition, right? Other like you might see. I like Kevin your idea of maximizing an existing utility, like the UPS would just add a couple drones to the top of their truck and they could hit 5 houses in the time span of hitting two, let's say. That would, yeah, absolutely. Well, if everyone's doing that, and you think of how many Amazon trucks we got going up and down our streets nowadays as well, and Uber Eats and this, like the skies would fill up pretty quick. Like you'd have a lot of buzzing bees up there, and for sure there would be collisions, right? Like there's just no way
Robot
around
wars.
it. Yeah,
Weaponize them.
Yeah,
Weaponize them exactly.
Yeah, so
I think what happened.
It's not hard to imagine like these big mothership drones kind of falling out of the sky, and when they fall out of the sky they're falling on your house, right? Like they're falling in your yard, that's I really is I think it does come down to airspace regulation, right? That's a big thing. Reason I can't get a helicopter to pick me up from my backyard and take me to work, right? I think you're just not much different if it's a big drone, right? That can drop a smaller drone. You still have this big machines hovering in the air, and I would be surprised, the more I think about it, if you would see it in an urban setting. I think,
and you're right. They would have to attest it through evidence that they're safe to get regulations changed, and that's the changing the hearts and minds of people. And right now, if you hear a buzz of a drone, it's annoying, right? And we a lot of us don't like it. But I also remember in the late 1990s and early 2000s, where if you were walking down the street with a cell phone, people would tisk you, like, "Oh, pay attention to the world around you," right? But the hearts and minds change, and people kind of they adapt to the new technologies.
I think a big question we should ask ourselves too is like, how convenient do we have to make everything? Like when do we stop? Like, do we really need everything to be so convenient? I really don't think so. I think we can still go for a walk or a bike ride, or
We can. I agree. Although I think the answer to your question is that efficiency is always going to be, people are always going to be seeking it, and where
there's a market for it.
There's a market for it. That's right. Exactly.
Something interesting about Mark, by the way, is he came to Brantford to this would be about 10 years ago also, to the there's a professor there that teaches game theory. You remember that, Kevin? There's a game theory course in Brantford at the school.
Game design, Brantford, Ontario.
Game design, yeah. And Mark went to Brantford about 10 years ago and talked to the professor there.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. He's Mark
Scott Nicholson. Scott Nicholson is his name. Yeah, the guy who runs the game design program at Wilfrid Laurier University.
What's Mark's channel called? Just to share that, because it's a great channel.
If you search Mark Rober, you'll find him on YouTube. Yeah. And I highly recommend him for anybody. He's a pop YouTuber, but it's really neat stuff. It relates to the use of technology and fun projects, etc. I do not recommend watching his video on bed bugs. It is disgusting and nasty, and I couldn't handle it. But his other ones are great.
Well, can I mention a couple things that I have read?
Oh yeah.
Just real quick. One we talked about a year ago with Damien Walter, and I finally dug into it. John Brunner's The Shockwave Rider. I don't know if you guys remember talking about that, but it's I believe it's mid-late 70s, and it is noted as being an earlier representation of the cyberpunk. Like it has elements of cyberpunk a good 5 years or more before we really see it booming in the early 80s with Shockwave Rider. I thought it was really good. It actually reminded me a lot of Philip K. Dick's writing. Like it was a lot of office talk, character speaking about the world around them and describing the world around them, and the computers and the connections and the wires connecting. So it's really good. I do recommend that. I'm the kind of person that likes to get to when there's a genre, when there's like a new kind of music or something, I want to hear who did it first. I want to get to the beginning of that. So apparently this Shockwave writer is one of the earliest representations of what we know now as cyberpunk. So it's not super exciting. It's interesting. But I do I recommend that one for sure. You got to read that one. And then finally got into Wool by Hugh Howey. And I kind of rushed that one along because of the new show Silo, which is based on his books. And I did watch the first episode, and I'm a little bit surprised at how good and original that show is. I don't know if you guys have checked out Silo, but it's like, oh my goodness, they've really set this up really well. I did like the book, thought it was great. I hope we can get Hugh Howey on the show sometime. It'd be great to talk to him because what a ride to go from. I think he's done many different kinds of books, but Wool, it's check out Silo also, and if you like Silo, check out the book. It's really neat concept. It kind of feels like it's been done before, but he adds a few things that are just original, and his writing's pretty good. And I'll recommend Wool.
I watched the first two episodes of Silo and really enjoyed it. And I didn't realize it was based on a book. I should have realized it's all based on books nowadays, isn't it? So, if you're recommending the book, I'll check it out because I'm really enjoying the show so far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had read those books back when they came out, Wool and then Shift and then Dust, by Hugh Howey, and they were, I believe they were self-published, and it was recommended to me on Kindle, and it's like this dystopian, super claustrophobic type society there's this underlying mystery where you're just wondering what's going on and why and why and why. So there's a few things that draw you through, right? There's the mystery of why this world exists, and because we don't know as the readers or I haven't actually watched the show yet, and I'm looking forward to watching it. Thanks for the recommendation. But then he with his other books, he creates other mysteries and more mysteries, and it's you just want to keep reading to find out what's going to happen. It's a neat series for sure. I enjoyed it.
I've been reading Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton, and it's pretty cool. It's Mickey is a human disposable. So this is an expendable man, essentially an expendable person who is brought along on space missions. These are low qualified people who do really dangerous work and can last longer than a drone would in a, say, a reactor situation or something like that, where the circuits would immediately be fried on a drone or a robot. They can send in a disposable human who is then regenerated, right? So long as they're uploading regularly, they sort of get to come back, but they have to die awful deaths all the time. And so you have someone who's in debt and running away from someone. These are sort of people who become this. So this idea that you're kind of immortal is actually relegated to your sort of lowest status people, and for long range space missions. And so it's a really kind of interesting concept with a bit of that sort of turns the idea of the benefits of immortality on its head. And Mickey 7, of course, is in his 7th iteration of himself. And anyways, it's pretty cool. And I'm only just about halfway through, but I understand they're turning it into either a TV show or a film. I believe it's been optioned. So I thought I'd check it out. I needed a sort of fun, spacey sort of read after the last one as well. So I was like, yeah, I need to get back to spaceships and interstellar travel for a little bit. And so that's been my sort of thing. Cool. And then in terms of watching, I know I'm late to the game, but we watched The Last of Us recently, and it's fantastic. It's if The Walking Dead had been a little more artistic, right? It had been a little more sciencey and had a little more basis and made you feel like it could happen, right? Like it's some of the best television I've watched in a very long time. So I know everyone's raving about it, and I'd just like to add my name to the list of everyone raving about that one as well. So that was a lot of fun. We burned through it like a week and a half. Like it's the whole family watched it. It was great.
Cool.
Nice.
I still haven't seen that either, but I should. I was watching, and I don't need to recommend this because this movie, it's a movie. It won like every Oscar, right? Everything Everywhere All at Once. I finally saw that movie, and for the two of you who haven't seen it yet, holy man, talk about a creative romp. And it was one of these ones that had a little something for everyone. And there was the love, there was this multiverse aspect that was very sci-fi. There was mysticism and magic and spellbinding, weird, mind-bending ideas, comedy. Uh, yeah, I can really see why it won a lot of Oscars because it was a pretty darn good movie. I don't know if you guys
Very,
saw it.
very original. It's really hard to compare that film to anything.
Yeah,
I was just impressed at the scope and breadth of their abilities there, right? Like,
Hmm.
because the story just takes you on an epic journey. And
Hmm.
Michelle Yao and Jamie Lee Curtis,
hmm.
just incredible, right?
Yeah.
And Jamie Lee Curtis, man, she just could just transform herself into, like, what a character actor, right?
I had
And
no idea that it was Jamie Lee Curtis at first.
yeah,
Took me a while.
and I love that we could see someone like Michelle Yao show her acting chops. Like, we kind of know her from Crouching Tiger and as a martial artist, but and she was fantastic in that as well. But you're wowed by her martial arts prowess, and this was a great showcase for her acting abilities, and to show that she's also got this great depth of talent, and I love that Hui Kwan got his comeback as well.
Short round for
Yeah,
Indiana
Yeah.
Jones. Hmm.
the Goonies as
Oh,
well,
right.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Goonies.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
those I can't recall the director's name, but there's two of them, good friends, and they directed a film prior to this one called Swiss Army Man with Daniel Radcliffe and Paul Dano. And that is also one of the most original films. It's just Paul Dano is stranded on the island with the dead body of Daniel Radcliffe. So the whole time Daniel's playing a dead person, but Dano uses the body for all kinds of neat little tricks for survival. And you wonder if he was insane. Like, it's so weird.
Mhm.
Oh, Kevin, are you reading anything right now?
Ever wondered what it takes to make it in the movie business? Peel back the curtain with 4-6 Success Filmmaking. 4-6 Success Filmmaking is where filmmakers share their stories and the secrets.
It's beyond competitive out there.
There have been movies that it's taken me 10 years to get made.
Don't wait to create. Like, you've got to just keep making stuff.
Tune in to 4-6 Success Filmmaking for your dose of cinematic realness, direct from the voices that have lived it.
Well, I am, but it's blasphemy because I'm reading a fantasy book. And so
We can do
I
that here.
oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, we're fantasy friendly. It's cool.
Yeah, I'm reading. I've read a number of the Wheel of Time books by Robert Jordan, and I'm finally
Oh,
getting
wow.
through that series because I wanted to watch the shows. I haven't watched the shows yet, and I understand they diverge from the books, but honestly, the books are fine. It's not like they're gospel and they can't be diverged from. But it's an entertaining romp. So yeah, I'm reading the fourth book in the series. And these are long books, and if you really like fantasy, it's yeah, I would probably recommend the Wheel of Time series. It's an enjoyable one.
Yeah, I read them years ago, and it's just a lovely escape, right? It's
That's
just
it. That's it.
yeah.
That's it. Exactly.
Well, today we're going to be talking about Light from Uncommon Stars. This was my pick for this past month. You know, I often talk about the scope of stories that are possible in science fiction, and I often do so and refer to authors like Anne Leckie and Arkady Martin. And after reading this, I'll have to include Ryka Aoki, who's the author of Light from Uncommon Stars. This is genre bending sci-fi. It just landed with a big splash, and I mentioned it in passing at work recently, and everyone knew the book that I was talking about. And so to me, it's been a really fun and exciting experience to read this book, and something I can't compare it to any other book that I've read before. So um, there is a violin teacher who has sold her soul to the devil and is known for coaching virtuosos. And she finds a transgender prodigy who's a runaway, as I mentioned, and she sort of takes her under her wing. And of course, there's an exchange for her soul that's going to happen there. There is some aliens who've opened up a donut shop. There's a love story. There's a demon, the devil, all of that. So it's yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think, like I said, it takes you places that very few books do, and from a voice that's rarely heard. So it's yeah, I really got a kick out of this one. Sort of excited to hear what you guys thought of it.
Yeah. I don't know about you, Tristan. Well, I too, it was unlike anything that I've read in I don't know how long, because it's genre bending, right? Like this is, and I mean those are some of the best books are the ones that do things non-traditionally, and so this was a fantasy book, but it was a sci-fi book. Um, it was clearly a whole series of allegories for stuff, right? Like the I mean, Katrina's story was quite clear that here's this violin virtuoso who would have done extremely well in her life had she not been brought up in her upbringing with you know, a violent father and being transgender and the whole bit. And so the story around that was pretty clear. But then this whole story of the aliens coming, right? Lan Tran and her family, that to me was an allegory for the immigrant experience in at least in North America, where they're trying to get away from something that was it's certainly the first generation perceived to be really bad, trying to fit into Western culture, but doing so in a really endearing kind of way. Like it does a great job of getting into these types of allegories around disenfranchised groups of people without being preachy. And the story is exciting. It pulls you along. It pulls you along. So I really enjoyed it. And again, it's not pure on sci-fi, right? That's not what this book is, but the genre bending nature of it, I thought added to it. There was a lot there that a lot of different people could really connect to. Certainly, I noticed a couple times where the story pivoted. It would go left and then go right and then go left and then go right. And at the end, I remember thinking to myself, "Oh, well, the story's keeping on going. They're adding on something else at the end here." And that was a little bit surprising to me. Like it certainly wasn't a tight plot, not at all. But that's not. I don't think that's what the author was going for. But I highly recommend. I thought it was great. Every single one of the characters was unique. You don't. I don't know that I've ever read a book where each of the characters were so different. It's just so out there. And so for those of you who really like characterly based stories where the characters are really interesting, I think this is totally a book for you. Good pick, Sam.
Yeah, I also thought this was a great pick. It didn't quite scratch my sci-fi itch, I guess. So definitely keep that in mind. It had me really hoping for more of the. I wanted to find out more about the aliens. I wanted a little bit more of that. That being said, it is a fantastic book. It's extremely original. Everything you guys said, I completely agree with. The characters and relationships were really nice, like really, really good. And something unusual is as dark as some of the plot was, and as dark as some of the characters' backgrounds, somehow this book was very light. Like it wasn't. I mean, yeah, like there you really were, sad and empathized with these characters if you can. It maintained this we got to get through this, we've got to push through this, and it kept the optimism was present the entire way through. Something that I really liked about it too, that was a real surprise, was it's about music. Like music was a very important part of this book. And I had no idea. I thought we were going to be reading about donuts, like space donuts and stuff, because I just heard that so much in reviews and what people said. But to hear that it was about music and how music feels, and then the technicalities of music, and then the prestige of certain musicians and teachers, and the world that our main character goes into, that was a real treat for me because I love it when sci-fi and music cross over for some reason. I really do. So that was a neat surprise. And it was done so well. So I wonder if Ryka Aoki is a musician or trained in any way. I actually didn't look that up. I'm interested to know, but I wonder if she is trained, classically trained, or what. So because it does come out, it feels real the way that it's described, and it just had so many. I recommend this book because it has so many important themes that everyone should just read about. One reason we read books is to view the world through other people's perspective. And if you read books because you want to read other people's perspectives, this is the book. Like, this is a perspective that for many people, it's a world that we just don't know about. And I definitely think that it's an important book for everyone. So whether you're a sci-fi fan or fantasy fan, I also think it's that easy gateway to sci-fi as well. Folks that don't necessarily love sci-fi and reads fantasy, this is kind of a gateway a book for those folks as well. And then the love story was good between oh, and now I'm going to forget all the names. I totally did forget all the names, but the donut shop lady and then the
Lan
teacher,
Tran.
Lan Tran, and is it
It's Shizuka Satomi.
Suzuka Satomi? Yeah,
Shizuka Satomi.
Shizuka
Mhm.
Satomi. And that was unlikely. You kind of saw it coming a little bit, but then yeah, that was really well done, and I loved those characters. And to hear how their story concluded was really nice. And yeah, this is an optimistic book that takes that looks at the world from a pretty harsh reality, and then just kind of it's really optimistic and it's fun the whole way through. Yeah, love this book. Great pick.
Oh, well, I'm glad everyone, like, I really enjoyed it, and there's a lot of lots of layered themes in it, right? Kevin alluded to this, the refugee and fleeing war and that experience, and how that she describes war too is really interesting. Is more of a disease, right, that can infect you and draw you in, and it was a really interesting sort of curve to that piece. And writing from a trans perspective, I don't think we see enough of. And when you're looking at Aoki's background, you're wondering if she's a musician. It doesn't appear to be. That she's got an undergrad in chemistry, and then she did a master's of fine arts in creative writing at Cornell. So it's, you have someone who's just got this scope, and I think that's, you see that in the novel as well, right? Like, you have a novel with such grand scope, and it's if I were to, after reading this, I'm not entirely surprised at this background. She's a martial artist by the looks of it. Assuming her Wikipedia page is current and correct, but there's just a lot of depth and creativity to this story, and I was happy to be the one to bring this to the show. So I sort of felt like I found a little gem, and and then after talking about it, realized I was just the last one to hear about it because everyone seems to know this book. So
Yeah,
if you
I
haven't
agree.
read it already, go check it out. And I'm a little embarrassed to be late to this game, but
But
yeah.
Rika, I think, is also an excellent author. Like, in terms of the
Mm.
writing style, like, Tristan, you
Mm.
said that it was light, and I think it was kind of light. There's no huge conflict. I mean, yes, somebody's selling their soul to a demon and all this kind of stuff, and there is space battle, etc. But it's fairly clear that the protagonists are going to get through this. But what really also draws you along, apart from the fact that you really like the characters, is this poetic writing. Like, I remember reading some sentences and saying, "Wow, that's just an extremely well crafted
Yeah.
description," and it's very poetically done. That's I think one of the best ways to describe her writing. And I don't know of her other books. I don't know of her other writing, but it's evident that she's a very good writer, I think.
Well, it's a kind book too, right? So she was sort of compared to in this one overview to Becky Chambers, and I could see that too, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's the stakes are large, but not the stakes are high, but they're not heavy handed, right? So it does sort of feel lighter in that sense, this in spite of that. And I think that you get that from Becky Chambers as well, right?
I
Like where
agree.
her reading is like you get to experience different perspective on life and how different ways to live. And there's great risk, but that's not you're not beaten over the head with it. And it makes it a little easier to get through. Anyways, it's definitely on our go read list here at the podcast.
And something worth mentioning too is maybe have something to eat before or even while you're reading. Because I remember reading the first bit and she's talking about donuts, of course. She describes nachos really well at some point. And even when someone's feeding ducks in one part, she's feeding ducks with a hot dog bun. And I was just like, oh, I think I need to get something to eat a couple times. So worth
But she
mentioning.
describes the food really well, right? And it makes
Yeah.
you sounds appetizing, makes you
It's
hungry.
important to the story somehow. Like those donuts, we've got aliens working in a donut shop. Like somehow those donuts become an important part of bringing relationships closer in a way.
Yeah.
Unique, very unique.
So Kevin, you're the book choice of the month. Where are you taking us?
Well, I am bringing us to fully back into the realm of space opera once again. I think my last choice was a Peter F. Hamilton book. This is Peter F. Hamilton aligned, but kind of the British version of him. Because I think Peter F. Hamilton is American. Hope I'm not getting that wrong. Anyway,
No,
Alistair Reynolds.
Hamilton's British.
Hamilton's British. Okay, so I'm sorry. This is yet another British science fiction author named Alistair Reynolds. We've not read one of his books on our show before, which is a glaring oversight because he's a prolific author, very popular, and a lot of people love him. And so it's pulpy. It's not high literature, but it is one of these ones that gets your ideation juices flowing. He's got some really neat ideas. There's an element of whodunitism, kind of like Peter F. Hamilton. But I felt like it would be a good follow-on to the last book that we read. So I hope it's a good pick. And typically we try to do more contemporary stuff, but this is the first book in his series that's become very, very popular. Revelation Space is the name of the book.
I've heard of this.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's the first in a series of, well, he's written a number of books in this universe, but really there's 3 books that follow on to this one. There's Revelation Space, then Redemption Arc, and then Absolution Gap. And I'm sure many people have seen those books in bookstores. They're very popular. It was written in 2000, and so it's 23 years old now. And it was up for a few awards, and some of the books later in this series won British Science Fiction Awards as well as Arthur C. Clarke Awards. So the neat thing about this is Alistair Reynolds has a PhD in astrophysics, and so it's realistic, but not so hard sci-fi. Like it's plausible. This is like plausible sci-fi, somewhat plausible. And there's no faster than light travel. So they make an intergalactic traveling, spacefaring human society, and they don't muck around with FTL. So those stories are always interesting. And so he has to solve that with certain biological functions and certain technological things. And what does that mean for society when they progress at different rates? And so and there's also aliens, dark. These are dark books. Peter F. Hamilton's are a little bit lighter. His books are a little darker. And it ain't short. So I'm sorry that Revelation Space is a little bit longer.
Yeah, I see it's a bit chunky.
It's a chunky book.
Good.
It's a chunky book. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it to get into. I don't know how else you get into Alistair Reynolds without reading Revelation Space. So that's my recommendation. That's the book we're going to do for our next one.
So I have heard about this for a
Nice.
long time. Just about to grab the audiobook and notice that it's narrated by John Lee, who is the same narrator as the Peter F. Hamilton book that we read not too long ago. That was a terrible impression, but I give it a go anyway.
John Lee. Yep. Yeah, he's done a lot.
Well,
A lot of
great
it.
voice, great voice.
Mhm. Yeah.
Cool. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too.
All right.
Right on.
Once again, thank you for joining us on Tales from the Bridge. Let us know what you think of the show. Review, subscribe, download the episodes. Go back and check out our back catalog. We got a lot of stuff out there. And read along with us on this next book. Alistair Reynolds, quite a fine writer, so it'd be fun to read along. Join us in the conversation if you can, even online, email. Thank you for joining us once again. Until next time.